Good afternoon. Thank you for joining our webinar sessions today. My name is Tiana Trent and I'm the GovReports representative. With me today is Alee Cochran, a registered BAS agent and a long-term client of GovReports, to present to you the GovReports integrated ATO services to support your BAS and tax practice. Along with Jason McGilray, and unfortunately Jason is not well, so I will fill in for Jason's along with Alee to present this webinar topic for you today. In these sessions, we aim to show you what are all the ATO services that you can get access to in GovReports and how to set them up and use them in your practice. So hopefully you can pick up a few tips on how to use these features and services for your practice. Before we start, can you hear me? We only got at the moment, only Alina is on the line. Alina, can you hear me? Okay, since there's only one. Alee, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, good. We just move along. The webinar is being recorded and posted on the website by tomorrow morning for those who want to revisit at your convenience, and for those who cannot make it for today's sessions. During the sessions, if you have questions, please send them through to the chat box so we can attend to them during the question time. So let us start it. Over to you, Alee.
Thanks very much, Tiana. Hi, I'm Alee, and I'm going to show you today about setting up your GovReports and how to utilise the different features and ATO services to support your BAS and tax returns. So what we're looking at now on the screen is our basic GovReports dashboard. You can see on the the left-hand side here, you get a bird's eye view, which is the screen you're seeing now, which gives you a summary of the lodgements and gives you an indication of what's happening in your GovReports account. You also have your clients, the authorised users that you have set up to access this GovReports program. You will have a history about the lodgements, and we'll go into that a little bit more. And then you have the practice management side under the My Practice tools. So when you first have signed up for your GovReports, you'll need to go in and set up your account settings. And to do that, we go over to the right here to the gear icon in settings. And you'll notice there you have details like My Account. So if you go to My Account, it will show you things about where you go in to set up your business details. And apologies if it's a bit slow coming in here. So you can see the business details there, your own profile, security settings, your email settings. You also have an email log. So when you sent the emails out, you can see when it was sent, how it was sent. You can have a look at it. And then you also have the notification settings. So this allows you to go through and set up about the notifications that you want to receive. A good idea is to weekly subscribe to this report that will show you the status of your GovReports lodgements, completed jobs, things that are upcoming. So you'll get that weekly reminder. Going back to my settings at the top here, the next thing you want to look at is your lodgement settings. A very important part to be able to get this to work for you effectively is the first step we need to do is, like we do with anything else, we want to go in and set up our ATO software nominations. So in the lodgement settings, you'll see the ATO software nomination. And in here, it should pre-populate with your business details, provided you've entered that all in at that account setting stage and updated the profile, etc. What will then populate is the GovReports software name, its ABN and ID, and then you can submit that. Now, once you've submitted that, you want to go to the Access Manager from your ATO portal, and you want to add GovReports as one of the softwares that you have hosted there. It's much the same as what you do when you're doing an STP, setting up so that you can lodge the STP lodgements. We're doing the same things that is going to allow GovReports to communicate to the ATO through this program.
Okay.
So the next part I'm going to pass on to Tiana. Do I need you to share a screen or anything, Tiana, for that?
No. So for tax agents, Ali, it's the lodgement setting. You will have a little bit more extensive. So you've got not only the ATO software nominations, there are a few other things that you can also get it set up as well, including the ELS credential for those tax agents that want to lodge earlier tax returns. So for example, because our system, GovReports system, incorporate tax return services from 2012 onwards, but prior to 2018, I think you will need the ALS credential. For those that want to lodge tax return before 2018, you will need ALS credential set up. Okay, back to you, Ali.
Yep, I'm just showing the ELS credentials on the screen here, so you can see what it looks like. You should be able to see that. You can see here that, what my screen shows as a BAS agent is a little bit different to what the tax agent will have. Excuse me for a minute, I'm just going to mute while I cough. And you'll see that there are a number of different options. In the BAS agent, you'll only see the ATO software nomination, the outstanding reports and the report settings. These additional rollover, prefills, ELS, managed tax agent, trust are all related to the tax agent one. So when you go into your ELS credentials, you'll have an ELS approval number and a lodgement office. You'll choose the lodgement office there. So the next thing we want to do is we'll have our client configurations. So bear with me, I'm going to mute myself again. Sorry, I have a frog in my throat. It's a bit odd. My screen's gone a bit different to where I wanted to go. But there is in here your ELS. I'm just looking for the next screen that I had. Okay. So the next thing I'm looking at is our report settings. So I'm going to flick back to my other screen and I'm going to show you where we go for the report settings. So you'll notice here that in I've still got my ATO software nomination showing. And so rather than going back to my settings button at the top here, you will see that my report settings are down here. So by clicking on my report settings here, I can set things up such as our lodgement receipt and also the ability to hide tax file numbers in reports. So if we're sending reports out via email and PDF ones, and we don't want those tax file numbers to show when we're sending those out, we can turn this hide tax file number in the PDF reports on, so that does that. The lodgement receipt settings allows us to customize the way that we actually send a lodgement receipt to the client after we've completed the lodgement. So when we do the lodgement, this is the standard template that comes, but there's nothing stopping you going through and customizing that more. Each of these things in brackets here is actually a placeholder. So like a mail merge file, you can create your placeholders in your lodgement receipt. So in here you might say hi, might be client name, or it might be contact name, and your practice name will come here, has completed the lodgement of your, and it'll talk about what the lodgement is related to. It'll pick that up from the report. Here's a copy of the lodge report, etc. And if you want to put something else in there, you can. And you can also go through and, the first thing you have to do is make sure that we tick the box there so we get the access to edit our document. And then we could go through and we could add in things like a signature and customize the signature to make it look very professional. And the next thing we want to do is actually go through and say, okay, well, when I send a lodgement, when a lodgement's been done, I want to automate that and send these receipts off to the clients automatically. And so I can choose which ones I want that to happen for. And then I can save those changes. And it will mean that when I send a lodgement off, and it's come back, it's been accepted, it's been lodged, it's finalised, then the lodgement receipt email will go out to the client automatically for me. And that's something very handy and a great time saver. But it's important, if you want to customise this message, go in and make it more about what you would like to say, how you'd like to word it. It's a great start, and it's great to do it. But if you want to make that more personalised, do that by amending the wording and editing the signature to make it truly yours. Now, the other area we have is our outstanding reports. So I'm going to go back to my home screen. And on my home screen here, you'll see in here we have the list of all our clients and whether they're active, or you can see the status of them. But in here we have our lodgements. Now, in our lodgements, we can see a history of the lodgements that we have made. We can see the reports that we currently have saved but haven't been lodged as yet. Some are in draft. This one's valid, it's ready for signature. We can see other information, which I'll go through shortly. But the other one we can see is the outstanding reports. Now, in this outstanding reports, what we can do is we can see the reports that are outstanding and need to be lodged with the ATO. Tiana, do you see a little bit more in this area when you are looking at the tax side of it?
Yep, from the tax agent's point of view, the outstanding report will, when you set up the outstanding report in your account, it will list out and configure the clients. It will pick up all the outstanding lodgements or upcoming lodgement for clients, including not only the activity statement, but all the tax returns, the TPAR, and of course, like I said, any tax returns. The only thing that we haven't got here that will not be including this list is the single touch payroll. That's simply because the ATO at the moment do not have the the records of who needs to be lodged SDP. But I think over time it possibly will, and when that happens, we will let you know. At this stage, everything else.
Now, one of the benefits of this outstanding reports is you can manage your workflow with this report. So just going to go back to our outstanding reports here. And you can see in here that I can click on the client configuration and I can select all the ones that I'd like it to pull the outstanding reports for. So you may have gone through, and we'll talk about clients in a minute and how we can set those up and bring them in. You may have gone through and set up a whole lot of clients and brought a whole lot of client information in, but you have not got all the outstanding reports showing. You hadn't gone through and set that up on the clients as you went along. So you can go to this outstanding reports area, go into the client configuration and tick the ones for all the clients you'd like to bring it through, and then update your list and it will bring the outstanding necessary reports here. So let's talk about the clients. So we talked about doing the reports.
Sorry, Ali,
that's all right.
Can you go back to the outstanding reports?
Sure.
Once you've configured the clients, you also need to go into and set the sync frequency setting. Just go back to the action tab, and sync frequency setting, and make sure that it's put onto weekly, fortnightly, or monthly. I would not, I normally don't recommend that you put it on daily unless you've got a lot of clients and you need updates on more frequently than usual. But otherwise, weekly, fortnightly, or monthly would be the best. And that means that each time or each week, if you do it each week, then it will update for you the list of the upcoming lodgements for these clients that you have configured.
Thanks, Tiana.
And it will do automatically.
I do it weekly rather than daily. Daily is just, especially if you're a BAS agent and the tax agent's accidentally disconnected you, or vice versa. You'll get these error messages popping up. I'd rather have an error message once a week and fix it once a week than have to do it every single day.
Agreed.
So,
And also, not only that, when the ATO is offline, and it just happens that the synchronizations happens when the ATO is offline, you will get error notice that it's not syncing, and it, sometimes it's a bit annoying. And that means you have to go back and do a manual update, because the frequency is now offset because due to the ATO offline. So you need to update it and manually to get an updated for that week. I mean, for that day. But weekly, normally it doesn't happen as often.
Yeah, especially if you've got it on daily and it's on the weekend, because we know that the ATO likes to take things on the weekend.
Exactly.
So you'll be getting lots of messages. Okay, so let's go back to our main home screen again and have a look at our clients, because obviously we've set up some basics talked about the account settings here and our lodgement settings. Let's look at the clients. So you're ready to go with it here first. You have an option within GovReports to import your clients as a CSV file import. You can bulk download and bulk import you can bulk import your clients from the ATO. So if I went to bulk import from the ATO, you'll see here that it will update the clients. Now, obviously, you'd want to not necessarily do this once you've got your existing clients in there already, unless you're quite willing to understand that it may override some of, tick the box to override some of those clients. You just have to be a bit careful there. We don't want duplicates, and we don't want to necessarily override things that we don't want to override. So just be aware that import is there. It's a great tool at the very beginning where you've already got your clients sitting in your agent portal, and you're able to then download the information about them directly by importing through GovReports, so that you don't have to manually key in their details. So it'll bring in their client name, the type, the identifiers, contact name, the phone numbers, their address, and their financial institution's details. Now, if you do want to override the existing clients because you made some, you can tick that box and do so. But you've got that ability there to import, and you can see there you can import a list, or you can actually import a single client. So you have that option there. And you also have a CSV file import. So if you had information elsewhere and you hadn't, got everything wasn't quite up to date on the portal, that in the process of doing it, I'm not sure why I necessarily would. Tiana, would the CSV one, would that be just the odd data that you might like to add rather than the bulk ones?
The CSV, because a lot of tax software that for tax agents, if you're previously used a tax software somewhere, you can download your client list in CSV, or even if you keep a register somewhere in CSV, or in spreadsheets, you can actually copy and paste and put it into that the CSV format that we required, and upload it and save a bit of time.
Okay. So you can see there that if we want to add a new client manually, there's our importing one, but if you want to add it manually, you'll see here that you can get an option here to import it from the ATO. When you put the ABN in, you will choose whether it's an individual or a non-individual. Now, if you choose it as an individual, you'll notice here if I click on individual, it will ask me for a date of birth. If it's a non-individual, that will not appear there. And you can see the fields in red that will require completion. Obviously, this is the branch, the number, your activity statement number or your branch number. Can't even remember the terminology for it because some are branch numbers, some refer it to something else. But these are the ones I've only ever seen it ever go up as high as 2. There may be people who see more than that. Maybe tax agents see a little bit more than I do, but as a BAS agent, I've only ever seen it going 1, 2, and the most I've ever seen is 3. But in here, you'll just put in its ABN. If it's something like an incorporated association, a not-for-profit one that's an incorporated association that doesn't have an ABN, you have that ability to put that in there. And then you have the name, you have the type of business it is, the organisation type. You're going to use its main name, its trading name, etc. Then you have the business type. Then you have a field name for trading name. And if you want the name to be different to the organisation, like the organisation name that you've entered in up here, then you can type in a different name here. So up here, for example, you might want to put the entity's legal name, but down here you might want to use the trading name.
In most cases, because our system is inbuilt with ABN lookup, so once you put the ABN in, the entity name and organizer and trading name is usually automatically
So there you go.
pre-filled.
Oh, that's interesting. That's very interesting about that trading name, because I haven't had that for nearly 20 years. So,
so then in that case, you can put whatever it is there, but it's usually, it has to fit. There you go. It's come up automatically with the details from the ATO.
That's really interesting. I don't know why the ATO still got that too. And then you can obviously put the display name to be something different. And then you can assign it whether it's an active client or whether it's a lead. And you can later on, I'll show you later on how you can convert that. So if I said it was a lead, and I'll just put anything in here just for the moment to get past it. In here, when I go to change things, it will, when I go to save it, in here you see I have the option at this stage to pull the outstanding reports when I'm setting it up. And then when I click save, it'll actually automatically allocate me a client reference number. Now in here, in the actions next to here, you'll see here's my client here. Just wait for it to come up and you'll see the details appear when it comes up. Computer says no. The computer's thinking. So in here, you can see the different tabs covering different functions within GovReports. So we've got things like work in progress, things that we're actually working on in the file. It might be here, you can see down the bottom, we've got a PAYG summary report and an activity statement that is actually in progress at the moment. If there's more outstanding reports, they'll be displaying here. You'll get an overview here of the business, the information here. It will show you the statistics related to this business. Any that might be sitting invalid or draft, any that have already been lodged, and in here you'll see the access permission. I'll come back to these ones, but you can also see in here that if you've got letters that you've sent out, you can add a letter or create letters. You can create reminder appointments. You can put in your file notes. You can add attachments, like you might have if you haven't used GovReports to do an engagement letter, or you've got an existing engagement letter that was elsewhere, you could attach it and bring it in here. Otherwise you would use GovReports maybe to create your engagement letter. And then you've got the bill setting. So you've got a little bit about your client information there. So that gives us a little overview about our client screen and how we can bring those in from the ATO list or a CSV, or we can manually key them in ourselves. Now, once we're in our client, I'll just go into a different client. We can actually use the ATO services to communicate and sync information with the ATO. So in here, we can go through and do things like check our integrated account balance through the ATO accounts. If for some reason we become disconnected as the authorised, as one of the authorised people on this account, as I said, sometimes BAS and tax agents accidentally kick each other off when they're adding themselves in. We can go back and click the maintain authorisation, follow the prompts and check the box off, which will allow us to then reconnect. We can remove a client that we no longer have as a client. We can update the client's address details. We can update its authorised contacts. We can update the associates, and we can sync from the ATO to get information, as well as updating the financial institution's duty information. Now, all of that is done without having to go into the portal.
Just to add on to that, Ali, is that when if you're new to GovReports and if you have imported the client list from the ATO or from another software that you used to, from your previous software, obviously, when you bring it across to GovReports, import it into GovReports, not all the details will come through. If, for example, address, contact details, etc., that will not come through. What I normally like to do is just come to here, go to and sync from the ATO, and it would ask me whether I want to get an update from ATO into GovReports. So whatever the details that the ATO has on this client on their system will be imported into the system. So it will save you a little bit of time instead of data entry, their contact details, address, etc. into the system. And that is required for a lot of the forms that you prepare for clients when you're and launching it to the ATO.
Okay.
Besides that, sorry, and from the tax agent's point of view, the ATO services do extend a little bit more services, including access to what is it called? Statement of outcome of assessment and the non-lodgement advice. And of course, if you ATO communication, ATO client communication, which will be covered later on when Ali goes through that. But certainly ATO client communications will also be included on this list.
Wonderful, thanks, Tiana. So one of the things I'm showing on the screen now is about ATO communication. So one of the things that's really a fairly new feature, but it's fantastic, is that you can catch up and see what has actually been sent to your client in the form of communication and the type of communication it is. Now I'm just going to flick back to the other screen to show you how you access that. So from the My Practice area, we go down here to the ATO Client Communication. And then we would tick this wonderful little button here called Enable ATO Communication. Now once we've done that, will ask us some questions, and then it will return the client communication information that we've asked it to do. So here on the screen, you can see that this client was sent a lodgement overdue reminder on this date, and they were sent by SMS. And this one was a tax file number declaration. It was done by email, and this one was done by a digital agent. So you can see the way that the client has been communicated, the way the ATO has communicated to the client. And you can view and download those communications.
Or you can also email it to your clients directly and advising them that advising them that the ATO has communicated with them in relation to this matter.
And as Tiana touched on before, one of the differences there from a BAS agent view that we have on the other screen is the fact that you have the non-lodgement advice, which will display information such as this. You'll see the non-lodgement advice in here, and you'll see all this information.
Good thing is you just have to confirm that which financial year that they do not receive income and do not want to do the tax returns on that year, and declare and lodge. Instead of filling out the previously, you have to fill out the whole tax form, which in this tax return form, in this case, you don't have to. Just simply which financial year, confirm that, and declare and lodge.
Fantastic. Okay. So let's take a look now at some of the other useful tools that we have.
Before you go into that, I think for a lot of tax agents, the statement of assessment is one critical thing, because once you've lodged a tax return for your clients, you can also, when the ATO has processed the tax returns, you can get access to the statement of assessment from the ATO that has been sent out to your clients directly from GovReports by basically simply going to that ATO services and statement of assessment, and you can obtain that outcome of assessment. It used to be called notice of assessment. These days, I think the technical term is outcome assessment. So, yep, so when you lodge, like I said, for a lot of tax agents, this is really handy because you want to know whether the tax return has been processed and what is the outcome from that.
Thanks, Tiana.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to move back to my other screen now, and we're going to have a look at some of the useful reports that we have in here. So as I mentioned to you in the My Lodgements, you have the history of all the reports that have been lodged in the past. And when if you haven't got the automated lodgement receipt or payment options set up in there, in this historical one here, once it's been lodged, you can click on this and actually email a copy to the client. It'll normally populate with a name, and you'll see they'll send them a copy of the activity statement. It'll send them a copy of the lodgement receipt, and it will also send them a copy of the activity statement payment options. So if I was to open that up, we'll just open it up in another window for us in a sec. You'll see in here that it'll populate when the computer decides that it wants to talk. It will tell them the payment options they have for paying that activity statement in this case. Now, the other thing you have is you have the BAS payment options separately as well, so you can actually open that and send it off. In here we have one of the most useful ones, especially around the end of financial year or end of quarter, is your activity summary, statement summary. Now, your activity statement summary allows you to go through and select for a client for the year. It'll ask you what year, just sort of bear with me for a minute. You'll ask what client you want to choose from here. You'll choose the financial year that you're looking at to reconcile, and then you will generate a report. What happens with that report when it comes through, and I'm just waiting for my report to come up and not coming up for me. Give me a second, bear with me. There we go. Something I've got is out of order here. So back to my other screen to show you. You'll see here that it will pull out the information showing you what's been lodged. You'll see the different fields in this case on an activity statement summary. You'll see the G1, whether it's included, 1A, 1B. You'll see the W1 and W2 in terms of the payroll side of things, and there's no ABN withholding side of things. Then you'll have your 8A, 8B, and then finally the total amount that's due and payable. So how I utilise this in my practice is that I utilise this as a check. Sometimes I'll do it quarterly, but more often than not, this is the one I use the most when I'm doing things annually. I do look at it quarterly, but at the end of the year, I actually do a full GST reconciliation to make sure that no one's gone in and changed anything and taken a GST code off or changed a GST code in the accounting software if it's not locked off and it hasn't been picked up, so that I can reconcile. Firstly, I like to reconcile my wages when I'm doing the STP. So by running this report, I can then double check against my general ledger to make sure that my gross wages are this amount and that my PAYG withheld was this amount. And so then the only thing I need to do is then reconcile with my payroll as well to the general ledger and reconcile my superannuation. And I should be in a position then to do my STP finalisation. So between this, reconciling the payroll reports to the general ledger, all of those together will form the reconciliation around my wages for the PAYGW section. With the GST, I will run in my system, my accounting system, I will run an annual GST report based on whether it's an accrual or cash, whichever one it may be. And I will run that. And at this stage, I'm probably done up to March if I'm on a quarterly basis. And so I will run the report and find out what the figures are. And that will then be the amount that I have in June should correspond to the reports I pull out of my system. or if not, it allows me to make the adjustments to recognise that someone's made some changes along the way. This way I can be sure that my GST lodgements match from the computing system, match what I've actually lodged to the ATO. So I'm making sure that I can reconcile every step of the way. It's extremely useful. It is probably the most useful tool for me that I use, especially around payroll and especially around GST reconciliations. It is extremely useful. It just has, in the past, what I used to have to do was go in and look at every single lodgement in my client's one, write down the numbers, put it into a spreadsheet and calculate all the fields out myself, then run the reports to do the comparison. It was time consuming. By adding this activity statement summary report, that has cut down my time involved to get this information out to start my reconciliation by over 90%. It's a big time saver and it is a very, very useful tool.
I think from the tax agent's point of view as well, it's also really handy to have this report so they can see and adjust for the period 13 as well.
And I'm just going to go back to that outcome of assessments that you talked about, Tiana, because I've got the screenshots here for you now, just to show that when you do the outcome of assessment here, this is the sort of information you have coming up in here, shows you, and you can.
Sorry, just hold on. You've got the activity statement summary, the GovReports window, rather than the notice of assessment. Yeah.
All right, so bear with me while I get to that next screen. There's the outcome of assessment.
Yep, got it.
The information that would pull back would show you the assessments with the identifier and the financial year, and you'd be able to open that. And then when you opened it, you'd get something like this popping up for you.
Like I said, it's like the old notice of assessment. At least then you can see what the client has in terms of refund or the processing of their tax return that you've submitted for them.
Yeah. And then another area that we have, I believe, is, and you can see in here then, that you'll be able to see
income tax statements. That's correct. So with the outstanding with the ATO accounts, when you synchronize, for the BAS agents, you can only see the integrated clients account, but for the tax agents, you can also see the income tax statements as well for the clients the clients related tax file number and all the transactions. So you can see the date range on the top. So when you sync, it will only give you the latest, but if you adjust the from and to date, you can get as far as I tried to 2016. I still can obtain those information. So it's entirely up to you. Test us. I mean, we're not too sure how long the ATO has provided, but certainly it can go as far as I can remember.
Fantastic. So that's a little bit about those sort of settings. I'm just going to flick back to the other screen. So now that you've got this overview, you've got your settings set up, you've imported your clients in, you've drawn in the outstanding reports. Now from those outstanding reports, you're able to start to prepare your outstanding report, whatever it may be, whether it's an activity statement, whether it's a tax return or whatever it may be. You can also, in here, you can also view the instalment activity statement. So you can, if you're using an accounting package that you are syncing the information in, so this one won't do it because it's my test file, but if you have an accounting package such as Xero, MYOB or QuickBooks Online, where you actually bring in the information to pre-populate, because that's one of the things that you can do in here, just to show you, is that you can pre-populate the information. You can either type the data in manually or in the, of course I don't, in the terms in the in here, you can actually go through and manually enter it, or you can import the data from Xero, QuickBooks Online. You can read a BAS link file from MYOB when you're doing the activity statement. And I always find it very useful to view the instalment activity statement first, because towards the beginning of the new financial year, as you would appreciate, people will have done their tax, companies would have done their tax returns in May, and so their PAYG income tax instalment on their BAS may have changed. And so in here, you're able to view that first and make sure that your accounting software is up to date, so that when you extract the information from your accounting software, it brings across the correct instalment rate or percentage. Now, I think that's about all I've got to cover off, Tiana. Is there anything else you can think of that we should highlight?
Not really from the ATO services point of view in GovReports. Has anyone been using some of these services, and how do you, any thoughts, any questions so far? We don't have any questions at this stage from the chat.
I know I've been using it.
What do you use the most, Ali, as a BAS agent?
I use the integration of the integrated client account. So in my clients here, when I go in here and I want to have a look at my client, I go into my ATO here, into the ATO accounts, and in here I synchronize it to bring in my latest integrated client account, and I make sure that each quarter that it is reconciled to my general ledger, to make sure that all the payments that have come through have been allocated in the accounts correctly, because especially with sole traders, quite often, as you would appreciate, as BAS agents or tax agents, your sole traders more often than not will pay their own income tax out of their sole trader bank account. And so you need to know, as a BAS agent, I need to know, and you need to know for your activity statement, so that when you're allocating the payment that's come out of the bank account, you're sure that that payment actually relates to the business and therefore gets recorded appropriately, or if it's actually their personal one. So when you download your accounts there, you can reconcile all those payments. And if you've got a payment in your bank feed that doesn't correspond to what's on the ATO, number one, you're going to check with your client that it actually was a business one and not a personal one. And number two, if they say, no, I paid off my BAS with that, and it's not showing on the ATO one, you might then have a conversation with the ATO and say, look, the client made this payment on this date. It doesn't appear to be appearing on my integrated client account, and you can follow it up from there, because it's nothing worse than a client might have accidentally used the wrong reference number and ends up sending it to his private account when it should have gone to his business, or vice versa.
That happens.
So that's one of the way I use that, to make sure that I reconcile it. And also things like picking up, if people have got general interest charges that are actually being processed through, 90% of the time they get reversed out when the payment's made. But there is also sometimes when they actually have got that interest charge there, and that needs to be picked up and accounted for in the accounts as well. So you can see that very clearly on the integrated client account, as well as transfers from, especially with sole traders, where they have transferred any credits they had on their personal tax debt against any obligations related to the business's BAS. Sometimes they will have a transfer between those accounts, and they will be picked up too. So you're able to see that and account for that in the general ledger as well. So that's very useful part of why those accounts is really useful as well. And you can also, when you bring them out, you can actually export the extraction into Excel, or you can export it out to PDF. So if you want to send it to a client, so I did that this morning. I was sending a PDF off to the client of the integrated client account, and I didn't have to lodge into the ATO portal to do that. I was able to get it through synchronizing the account, downloading the PDF and sending it off to them.
From the tax agent's point of view, the additional of the income tax statements, similar to that of the integrated client's account, you know, when the tax agents lodge the tax return on behalf of the client, they can see when the refund comes through, probably earlier than the notice of assessment or the outcome of assessment. That's the new terminology. They can see it earlier, and they can basically, you know, if it's not what they have initially calculated in the system, they can go back and check it before the notice of assessment go out, and of course, you know, relodge it, or, you know, and discuss it with the client. But certainly they can see what's coming in when it's being processed, and action accordingly. Also, if there is a payment plan, they can see whether the client is making payment, you know, into it, you know, from the income tax point of view, but also in the integrated client's account, if they're making monthly payment, or as part of the payment plan, you can see whether they have been paid and been processed and received by the ATO, which then you can follow up with the clients and discuss with them on their options.
Thanks, Tiana. Anything else you can think of?
The other thing that I thought about is the ATO Client Communications, which you know, from you know, for the tax agent's point of view, you know, you can see all the transaction, as you can see here, the refund, the payment plan that they've notice of assessment that they receive, the also the payment plan, is it the payment plan that they've got, and notifications for that. Certainly this is, you know, good in the sense that you can email to your clients or call them up and give them a call and say, hey, you're about to receive this, it's been sent out, not too sure you have received it, but this is expected, and discuss with them what and plan in terms of planning their tax positions going forward, or how they you know, their working positions. I think it's a, I don't know. I mean, if you, I don't know if people have been using it, whether they find it useful, but I think for me, it would be really useful in the practice.
I think it's extremely useful. I'm just talking from a BAS agent point of view. You can see that the client has received a communication, and it may be that the ATO has sent them an email, and for some reason the email they've got is incorrect and the client hasn't received it. And, you know, you can look at what this is and talk to your client and say, by the way, did you receive this notification? And if they say no, then it's an opportunity to go in and just check the details that are actually on the system. It can be as simple as a letter being transposed in an email address when it's been set up, and they're not getting a communication. And some of those communications might be relating to demands for payments. So it's important, you know, or saying when something is due for payment. So it's important that we can use this client communication to keep those lines of communication open between the ATO and the client, and us acting as the intermediary to make sure that they're acting on those communications if they're, you know, if they're really important.
Especially, I'm not too sure about how you feel about getting text messages from ATO. How often do you think that's a spam? Or even emails, when you get an email, you're thinking, is this real or not? I mean, from the client's point of view. And, you know, SMS messages, when, you know, personally, even myself too, when I receive it from the tax office, I often just delete it right away, and not wanting to click on anything on that text message. And same with email. But letters are often, not often these days, that you actually receive physical letters from the ATO.
Yeah, that's their last when they don't get any response to communications. I find usually you get that letter coming in the mail. But I think that's a great point, Tiana. You know, with all the cyber issues around at the moment, people are very wary of responding to anything on their phone or anything that comes by email. And so they, you know, more often than not, I'll delete something.
Yeah, I mean, I've received text messages from it says it's from the ATO, and there's a link that you need to click on to get further informations, I would never click on those. I mean, it's because each other,
not to click links. And so whilst it's a great line of communication by the ATO sending an SMS, I think people are very wary now. And so this is one way that you can confirm with the client. If a client gets an SMS, or you can let your clients know, maybe in a letter you can send out to people, you can introduce your client to let them know that you now have this ATO communications facility within your program, and that if they need to confirm whether the correspondence they've received is genuine or not, reach out and talk to me because I can confirm it online. And that gives them a sense of security.
Cool. Okay. Do we have questions from anyone? Just while you're on that screen, oh.
It's all right, back of it.
Yep, the ATO services. For the tax agents, if your clients need to update the financial institution details, this is one of the areas that you can go in as well. And quite often clients do change the bank account details. So instead of going to the ATO and updating those details, you can go straight here and update the details. And it's also on your client's account. So when you prepare the tax return, they probably get preview anyway.
Yeah, but the same with the client address. Very often clients will change address, and the ATO not necessarily think about updating the ATO with a change of address. And so, in the end, it's the agent who ends up getting the mail because they are not able to get through to the client. And so this is a good way also to update the client address details.
Okay. We got a question from Rakia. Rakia, the webinar was scheduled for 4 o'clock. I'm not too sure the time difference between Sydney and Western Australia, but it was scheduled for 4 o'clock. It is recorded, and we will be sending out the link for you to get access to the recorded versions. Otherwise, you can also go into the website and the webinar sections page, and you get access to the webinar recording from tomorrow morning. We also have a questions from Gabriel. What does it mean when we get an ASCII alias does not correspond to credentials in the key store? Sandeep?
So is that this error is related to the backend services. So just want to confirm that. Is that the error that you're receiving when you're trying to do any tax returns? Sometimes it happens when there is, when there is an authorization error on the ATO side. But yeah, if you could give me more details, or if you send an email when you receive these errors, I'll look into that. That's nothing to do with on your side. This is on the ATO side.
In most cases, Gabriel, these days, ASCII is no longer required unless you are a tax agent lodging. Well, not really. You don't need an ASCII anymore. So yeah, if you get that message, probably just remove the ASCII, I guess. Cindy, did I? Yeah, we don't need ASCII anymore.
We don't need ASCII. ASCII we use ASCII related to GovReports. So that's what I'm telling you. It's a backend error. So just contact the GovReports support team when you get this error. We'll look into that.
Okay, I don't think I have any more to cover off. Is there anything else you can think of?
I think we covered well, Ali. I don't think any other ATO services that we have. Yes, we incorporated ATO integrations throughout the GovReports services. and some of most of the popular ones that we've covered today. So if you've got further questions about some of these services, please do not hesitate to contact us after the webinar if we haven't covered in these sessions. We're more than happy to assist you with those queries. Once again, thanks, Ali, for your time and your dedications and passions in the services, and of course the support for GovReports. And like I said, if anyone has any questions, let us know. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Tiana. Bye all.
Bye all.